In the heart of a quiet village, nestled between rolling green hills and bordered by a deep forest, lived a tailor named Obinna. His life was simple but filled with meaning. Each day, he would wake early, even before the first light of dawn, and begin his work in the small shop he owned. His hands moved deftly over fabrics, his eyes sharp with the attention to detail that made him one of the finest tailors in the region. From everyday clothes to elegant robes, Obinna had a skill that drew people from far beyond the borders of the village. His shop was located at the central crossroads of the village square, where villagers passed by daily to buy food from the market or fetch water from the well. The rhythmic sound of his sewing machine could be heard from early morning until late in the evening, a comforting background to the bustling life of the village. Obinna took pride in his work, though he lived modestly, keeping to himself and interacting only with his customers. He had no family, his parents long gone, and he had never married. Yet, there was something peculiar about Obinna, something that set him apart from the other villagers. Wherever Obinna went, cats followed him. At first, it was just a few stray cats that wandered near his shop, drawn to the warmth and shelter it provided. But over time, their numbers grew. No matter where Obinna went, whether to the market to buy fabric, to the river to wash clothes, or to the forest to gather herbs, the cats would follow him. They were of all kinds: black cats, grey cats, white cats, tabbies with stripes, and some with patches of orange or brown. Their eyes, golden or green, always seemed to be watching him. They never meowed, never begged for food, and never tried to enter his shop. They simply followed him in silence, as if drawn to him by some invisible force. At first, the villagers found this amusing. "Look at Obinna and his army of cats," they would say, laughing as he passed by with the felines trailing behind him. Children would run after him, trying to pet the cats, while women at the market would smile and shake their heads in bemusement. It became a common sight to see Obinna walking through the village, surrounded by his silent companions. But as the months passed, the novelty wore off, and the villagers' amusement turned to suspicion. The number of cats following Obinna seemed to grow with each passing day, and soon, there were more cats than anyone could count. They waited outside his shop in the mornings, followed him to the market, and lingered by his house at night. No one could explain why the cats were so drawn to him, and in a village where superstitions run deep, people began to whisper. "It's not natural," one woman said to her neighbor as they watched Obinna pass by with a dozen cats behind him. "No man should have that many animals following him." Her neighbor nodded, her brow furrowed in concern. "I've heard stories," she said in a low voice, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "Stories about men who are cursed. Perhaps the cats are a sign of something dark." Soon, rumors began to spread. Some said that Obinna had been cursed by a witch, that the cats were spirits sent to torment him. Others whispered that the cats were not cats at all, but demons in disguise, following him because of some terrible sin he had committed. People began to avoid him, no longer stopping to chat when they passed his shop, and no longer bringing him clothes to mend or new orders for garments. Obinna noticed the change, though he tried to ignore it. He had always been a quiet man, keeping to himself, but the growing isolation weighed heavily on him. He could feel the villagers' eyes on him wherever he went, could hear their whispers behind his back. The children who had once laughed and chased after the cats now kept their distance, their eyes wide with fear. The cats, however, remained. They followed him everywhere, their silent presence a constant reminder of the mystery he could not explain. At night, as Obinna lay in bed, he could hear them outside his window, their soft paws padding across the ground, their eyes glowing in the moonlight. He had tried to shoo them away, had even thrown small stones in their direction to scare them off, but nothing worked. The cats always returned, watching him with their inscrutable eyes. One evening, after yet another day of silence in his shop, Obinna sat at his workbench, his hands idle for the first time in hours. The shadows of the setting sun stretched long across the floor, and outside, he could see the familiar shapes of the cats gathering near the door. He sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. Something had to be done. He could not continue living like this, in isolation and fear. He needed answers. There was only one person in the village who might be able to help him, Baba Chaku, the village elder. Baba Chaku was known far and wide for his wisdom and his deep understanding of the spiritual world. People came from faraway places to seek his counsel, and his advice was said to be as powerful as it was mysterious. If anyone could explain why the cats followed Obinna, it would be Baba Chaku. The next morning, Obinna rose before the sun, determined to find answers. The village was still quiet as he made his way toward Baba Chaku's hut, which sat at the far edge of the village, near the dense forest that bordered their land. As always, the cats were there, gathered outside his shop as if waiting for him. They fell into step behind him as he walked, their presence a constant shadow. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with the soft pinks and purples of dawn. Obinna walked quickly, his heart heavy with uncertainty. What would Baba Chaku say? Could the elder truly explain the mystery of the cats, or would he, too, view Obinna with the same suspicion and fear as the rest of the villagers? As he walked through the village square, Obinna noticed that a few early risers had already begun their day. A woman carrying a basket of vegetables glanced at him, her eyes lingering on the cats that followed him. A group of children playing near the well stopped and stared as he passed, their whispers carried on the wind. Obinna kept his head down, focusing on the path ahead. When he reached Baba Chaku's hut, he paused for a moment, his hand hovering over the door. He could feel the weight of the cat's eyes on him, their silent presence unnerving. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. The door creaked open, and Baba Chaku stood before him. The village elder was an old man, his back bent with age, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. He had lived through many seasons, and his wisdom was renowned throughout the region. Baba Chaku's gaze immediately fell on the cats gathered behind Obinna, and his brow furrowed. Obinna, Baba Chaku said in his deep, gravelly voice. What brings you here so early, with such strange companions? Obinna sighed, feeling the weight of his exhaustion. Baba, I don't know why the cats follow me, he said, his voice heavy with frustration. No matter where I go, they are always there. I have tried everything to make them leave, but nothing works. The villagers are starting to believe that I am cursed. Baba Chaku stroked his long, white beard thoughtfully. Come inside, he said, stepping aside to let Obinna in. We will see what the spirits have to say. Obinna followed Baba Chaku into the elder's hut, a small, dimly lit space filled with the scent of burning herbs. The air was thick with the aroma of sage and other sacred plants, and the walls were lined with shelves holding jars of dried herbs, stones, and mysterious objects. The space was filled with an otherworldly energy, and Obinna could feel the hair on the back of his neck stand on end as he stepped inside. Baba Chaku motioned for Obinna to sit on a woven mat in the center of the room, while he took a seat across from him. For a long moment, Baba Chaku was silent, his sharp eyes fixed on the cats that had gathered just outside the door. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and their bodies were still, as if they were waiting for something. Finally, Baba Chaku turned to Obinna, his expression thoughtful. These cats, he said slowly, are not ordinary animals. They are drawn to you for a reason. Obinna's heart pounded in his chest. What do you mean, Baba? Baba Chaku leaned forward, his voice low and serious. Tell me, Obinna, do you know much about your family's history? Is there something in your past, something that might explain why these animals are connected to you? Obinna frowned, his mind racing. His family. His parents had died when he was very young, and he had been raised by his grandmother. She had always been a kind woman, gentle and loving, but she had never spoken of anything unusual in their family's history. My parents died when I was a child, Obina said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. I was raised by my grandmother. She never spoke of anything strange in our family. As far as I know, we are just ordinary people. Boba Chokwu nodded, his expression thoughtful. And when your grandmother passed, did she leave you anything? Any heirlooms, objects that might have been passed down through the generations? Obina thought for a moment. His grandmother had left him a few things, some clothes, her old sewing kit, and a small wooden pendant. He had kept the pendant in a box for years, never thinking much of it. It was a simple piece of wood, carved with intricate patterns, but it had never seemed significant. She left me a pendant, Obina said, his brow furrowing in confusion. I've had it for years, but I've never thought much about it. At the mention of the pendant, Boba Chokwu's eyes lit up with recognition. The pendant, he said, his voice filled with certainty. That is where your answer lies. Bring it to me. Though puzzled, Obina trusted Boba Chokwu's wisdom. He hurried back to his home, the cat following closely behind, and retrieved the small wooden pendant from the box where he had stored his grandmother's belongings. When he returned to Boba Chokwu's hut, the elder took the pendant in his hands and examined it closely. The pendant was simple, but as Boba Chokwu held it up to the light, the intricate carvings seemed to take on a life of their own, casting strange shadows on the walls. This pendant, Boba Chokwu said slowly, is no ordinary piece of jewelry. It is a talisman, a powerful charm that has been passed down through generations in your family. Your grandmother must have known of its significance, even if she never told you. Obina stared at the pendant in disbelief. A talisman, he repeated. But what does that have to do with the cat? Boba Chokwu held the pendant up to the light, his eyes narrowing as he examined the intricate carvings. Your grandmother was a woman of great kindness, especially toward animals, he explained. In her lifetime, she must have cared for many cats, and her spirit lives on through this talisman. The cats are drawn to it, not because of a curse, but because of the protection it offers. They are not following you, Obina. They are following the spirit of your grandmother. Obina's mind raced. Could it really be true? He had always known his grandmother to be a gentle soul, but she had never spoken of this talisman or the power it held. Why had she kept such a thing secret from him? Why had she not told him of its significance? I don't understand, Obina said, his voice trembling. Why would my grandmother leave me this talisman without telling me what it was? And why have the cats only started following me now, years after her passing? Boba Chokwu's expression softened. Sometimes, the power of a talisman does not manifest until the time is right, he said. Your grandmother must have sensed that you would need protection one day, and the talisman's power has only now begun to awaken. The cats are not here to harm you, Obina. They are here to watch over you, to protect you. Protect me? Obina asked, confusion and fear swelling in his chest. From what? Boba Chokwu's eyes darkened. That I cannot say for certain. But the presence of this cat suggests that there is a danger, something or someone who seeks to harm you. The talisman is shielding you, but it may not be enough. You must remain vigilant. Obina's heart pounded in his chest. Danger. Harm. He had lived a simple life, working as a tailor and keeping to himself. Who would want to harm him? The thought sent a chill down his spine. I don't know of anyone who would wish me harm, Obina said quietly. The world is filled with forces we do not understand, Boba Chokwu replied, his voice grave. Not all dangers come from the living. There are spirits, entities that walk among us, seeking to do harm to the innocent. The talisman is a powerful tool, but you must be careful, Obina. There are forces in this world that are beyond your control. Obina's mind swirled with thoughts, but he knew that Boba Chokwu was right. There were things in the world that he did not understand, things that could not be explained by reason alone. He thanked the elder for his wisdom and returned home, the weight of the pendant hanging heavily around his neck. The days that followed were filled with an unsettling sense of dread. Obinna continued his work, but his thoughts were consumed by the mystery of the talisman and the warning Baba Choku had given him. The cats still followed him wherever he went, their presence a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond his understanding. One afternoon, as Obinna sat in his shop, stitching a fine garment for one of the few remaining customers who still visited him, the door creaked open. He looked up to see a man standing in the doorway, tall and lean, with sharp features and a cold smile that sent a shiver down Obinna's spine. "Good afternoon, tailor," the man said in a smooth, oily voice. "I've heard of your skill, and I've come to commission a suit." Obinna hesitated. There was something about the man that made him uneasy, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Nevertheless, business had been slow, and he could not afford to turn away a paying customer. "Of course," Obinna replied, standing and motioning for the man to step inside. "Please, come in." The man entered the shop, his eyes scanning the room with a cold, calculating gaze. He paid no attention to the cats gathered near the door, but Obinna noticed that the cats had grown still, their eyes fixed on the stranger with an intensity that made him uneasy. As Obinna measured the man for his suit, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The man's smile never wavered, but there was a coldness in his eyes, a darkness that made Obinna's skin crawl. And the cats, who had always been calm and quiet, were now tense, their fur standing on end, their tails flicking in agitation. When the man finally left, the tension in the room seemed to lift, but the cats remained on edge. They hissed and growled at the door long after the man had gone, as if they sensed something dark and dangerous. Obinna's unease grew. Baba Choku's warning echoed in his mind. Could the man be the danger that the talisman was protecting him from? The thought lingered in his mind, but he had no proof, and so he went about his work, though the feeling of dread never left him. That night, Obinna could not sleep. He lay in bed, his mind racing, unable to shake the feeling that something was coming, something he could not see but could sense in the air. Outside, the cats moved restlessly, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. It was as if they, too, were waiting for something to happen. As the hours passed and the village grew quiet, Obinna sat by his window, watching the street below. The night was still, the only sound the distant rustling of leaves in the wind. But then, as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, he saw a figure moving toward his shop. It was the man from earlier, the one who had commissioned the suit. Obinna's breath caught in his throat. The cats, sensing the danger, sprang to life, their bodies tense, their eyes glowing with an ethereal light. Obinna knew, in that moment, that this was the danger Baba Choku had warned him about. The man was not what he seemed. Without thinking, Obinna grabbed the pendant from around his neck, clutching it tightly in his hand. The talisman felt warm against his skin, pulsing with a strange energy. The man reached the door of the shop and raised his hand to knock, but before he could, Obinna flung open the door. The cats surged forward, their eyes blazing with a fierce, otherworldly light. The man's cold smile faltered, and for the first time, Obinna saw fear in his eyes. "You cannot harm me," the man snarled, his voice low and dangerous. But Obinna held the pendant high, and as he did, the cats lunged. They moved with supernatural speed, their claws flashing in the dim light. The man let out a scream, a sound that echoed through the quiet village, as the cats swarmed him, their glowing bodies engulfing him in a blinding light. When the light finally faded, the man was gone. The cats, their duty fulfilled, sat calmly at Obinna's feet, their eyes no longer glowing but filled with quiet contentment. Obinna stood in the doorway, trembling with the realization of what had just happened. The cats had saved him, just as Baba Choku had said they would. From that day forward, the villagers no longer whispered about Obina or the cats. The felines still followed him wherever he went, but now they were seen as protectors, not omens. Obina, once a humble tailor, became a man of quiet strength, knowing that he was guarded by the spirits of his past. And so, the village came to understand that the things we fear are often the things that protect us the most. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe our channel.